as
Yeah,
well.
it is so true. I mean, starting small, just even if it is just listening to a podcast like Sounds of Health, for instance, it's
That's like
just,
sounds of
it's going to expose you to things that are out there that are
Shameless
going to help you.
self-promotion.
I know. I have to get a few in there every now and then. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sounds of Health. This is the show where we uncover inspiring stories, meet incredible people, and share valuable resources to help you boost your physical, emotional, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Dave MacNiven, and today I am super excited to welcome a very good friend of mine to the show, Sarah Caliendo. Sarah is a professionally certified executive and well-being coach who has worked with leaders at Rivian, Spotify, New York Times, Grubhub, and other fast-evolving companies for the past 8 years. She specializes in helping leaders in high-pressure roles be successful in and out of work without burnout. Sarah is based in the Bay Area and is mother of 2 who has personally overcome 4 cycles of burnout, and before becoming a coach, she spent over a decade as an operations executive in early growth stage tech companies. Sarah is also a cycling instructor, speaker, and mental health advocate. I can't even get it all out because you do so much. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. It was so great reconnecting with you. Just I don't even know when that was. What, like a month or 2 ago?
It was a couple of months ago, yeah.
Okay, wow. Time just goes by so quick.
Yeah, it felt like yesterday.
I know, it really did.
Yeah.
It actually feels like yesterday since we were in school together. So,
I know.
like a blink of the eye, and here we are with families and
Life
careers.
so fast.
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, I'm so excited that you agreed to be on the show with us because I have watched kind of your path and what you've been doing from afar. We're a country apart essentially, right? But it's been so amazing seeing your journey, and I love getting the opportunity to talk to you about it and share that with our audience.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Man, I mean, we were in college together, right?
Yeah, we were.
And for everyone else's benefit, we go back many years, formative years, frankly. And so I think that's kind of where my story begins, at least for our intents and purposes, because when we were in college together, I was an extremely, passionate creative. I was a performer, just like you. I was a singer, I was an actor. I really wanted to make a life of creating and performing. And that was really what I was intent on doing. Except for, there were a lot of underlying mental health issues, confidence issues that I really didn't realize at that time. And so it was only when I had graduated from college, and by that time I had done some professional tours and some professional work, I moved to New York City with a vocal injury. This vocal injury was super minor, but it was completely like identity altering, life
I'm
altering.
sure.
And so it was like this really minor thing that just completely destroyed me because I didn't have that foundation of well-being and mental health. And so what I ended up doing was I gave up that career. I pivoted to, well, what became, now we know what a startup is, right?
Yeah.
At the time, in the early 2000s, it didn't really have a name, but I was basically just desperate to find like any job I could to support myself in New York City. And so I ended up working as a customer service associate at this startup. And I was one of, the first 10 employees. And I ended up building my career as an operations leader, like you mentioned, which was, a long road, and I created a new identity, but really that is what set me into my mental health awareness, advocacy, self-development, and well-being journey, because I was doing really great at work. I was killing it. I was putting like everything into this new role,
Yeah.
but I still did not have that foundation. And so what had happened was I started having really intense GI issues, um, like completely debilitating stomach issues. I thought I was dying. I was going to see all the specialists. And I also had a really severe panic attack. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought I was dying. I thought I was having a heart attack. Um, and long story short, I I didn't know what to do, and the doctors were basically like, "There's nothing wrong with you.
Of
Have you seen a
course.
therapist?"
Right. It's what everyone wants to hear, right? There's nothing wrong with you. You should talk to someone.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because it wasn't so much of a stigma around mental health and therapy at the time. From my experience, it was more like I had no idea why they were suggesting I would go see a therapist. Like it just didn't, I wasn't connecting the dots. We didn't really have the same understanding of, the physical body to the mind, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that intense connection between the two. And so long story short, my then mentor and boss at my company said, listen, my brother is a psychotherapist. Therapy is going to be the thing to help you. Your doctors are right. Let him give you some recommendations. And he gave me a list of therapists. I started therapy, and that's where really the trajectory of my life changed very significantly. So that was my first foray into you need to take care of yourself mentally. And an entire world really opened up from there. But what didn't stop was my overworking and this desire to want to kind of just prove that I was good enough, frankly, for lack of a better word. I grew up not really believing that I was very smart or very capable or that I could do, big things. And so that was the message that I internalized. And so really in my quest to, build a career and make money and support myself, I was really internally just trying to prove my value. And so as a result of that, I became extremely successful, but but the dark side was I became really intensely burned out, really intensely burned out. Um, and so, I went through multiple cycles of burnout, overworking, intense exhaustion, eventually hating the job that I love very much, having really, really low self-worth yet again. And really because I had no idea what was happening to me and that I was in this cycle of burnout. And really everything changed for me once I had moved from New York City to here to California. By this time I had built at my second company, I'd built, like a $35 million business, and
That's amazing.
things were great. Thanks. Things were great on paper.
Right. Yeah.
Things were great on paper. I was successful. I had like the sexy job. People were trying to recruit me, boards were trying to pull me into their company. And I had my first kid and I was married and, like we were like, the power couple. And we moved to California and, all these things sort of happening at the same time, like birth of a first kid, the move, being pretty isolated in California without family, and frankly going through like existential crisis and also
Yeah.
being
I can imagine.
I just sort of like hit a rock bottom, asking myself, what am I doing with my life? I feel extremely lost, stressed out. Then I got pregnant again. So it was just like one thing layering on top of the next. And then a mentor of mine said, why haven't you thought about coaching? Why haven't you thought about coaching for your next role? And it really had never occurred to me. And so that was a pivotal moment for me because I then applied, got into a very amazing program called the Hudson Institute of Coaching in Santa Barbara. And that is where I learned the tools to identify my burnout, to recover from burnout and change my life pretty dramatically. So that's another pretty significant moment for me, I would say, where um, I had a completely different outlook on myself, who I was, what I wanted, and actually started taking much deeper care of myself.
Was that the point when you could define it as burnout, or did you have that understanding of it prior?
Yeah, I would say even at that time, I could not define it as burnout
Okay.
still. So while I had gathered all these phenomenal tools, my coach training, I still did not identify that it was burnout. It was really only until my fourth cycle of burnout, which was during COVID and a really, really intense, difficult divorce, that I knew what was happening, could identify it, and could more consciously sort of treat it, for lack of a better term, and then coach others through it as well. And that was because of the divorce and COVID. During that time, there was just a lot more awareness of stress in the workplace, and also there was this awareness of the term finally.
Yeah, right.
And I did some work at this company called Modern Health, which is a mental health benefits platform for employees. And through my work as a coach there, I would see burnout. I would see it over and over and over again. And so it was really through that period of time that, I mean, collectively we started to understand what it was, and then I personally understood what it was for me.
And can you go back and kind of see the symptoms of that throughout your whole life?
Yeah. So there are three kind of hallmark categories of symptoms. So I'm glad we're talking about this because, you could be in burnout and not even realize what's happening
Yeah,
to
I
you.
bet.
Often I find that most of my clients aren't aware that it's happening to them because that's actually part of the burnout itself. And so one hallmark symptom is like low self-worth, cynicism, and yeah, I would just describe it as like low self-worth, low confidence, and cynicism. So this might manifest at work as like imposter syndrome. It might manifest as things you might say to yourself are, oh, I can't, there's just like no way I can apply for that job, or what's the point? What's the point is something, that would come up often.
Right. And this could be
Just
something that you're feeling even in the midst of overwhelming success.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and this sounds so cliche, but it's true. All the people I work with, and even, friends and loved ones that have gone through burnout or are in active burnout, these are all like wildly successful, intelligent, caring, humble people.
Yeah. Something that you wouldn't really think of for these people. You wouldn't notice it from
Something
the outside.
something you would never really think of or observe from the outside. And you know, there's a lot of, I think, shame and embarrassment in burnout. I see that this a lot in men in particular. It's definitely the case with women, but in men in particular, there's a lot of shame I've observed in acknowledging like I'm not okay, I need help. And so when people come to me for coaching, like a man versus a woman will actually come with presenting with very different ideas of what they want to work on, or, what they're experiencing. It might be like with a man, oftentimes it's help me find more meaning and be more productive, even if underneath it's burnout. And with women, it's I'm burnt out, I'm overwhelmed, help me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, people that you would never expect. Uh, Also, I would say I work with a lot of really high performers and high achievers, people that are really successful. And
Right.
part of burnout is, like one of the contributors to burnout is this desire to want to conceal, present a certain way, suppress feelings. Perception is very, very important. Pleasing others and how you are perceived by others is very important. And so that just sort of adds to the burnout because you're often, hiding who you are. And that was the case for
Yeah.
me.
So almost like you're living another life.
Yeah, I was for sure living another life. I think there's multiple factors that contribute to burnout. There's systemic ones. There's, like lack of identity. And that one was a really, really big one for me because I was not comfortable with who I was. And I felt that I needed to show up a certain way for people to love me, respect me, hire me, period.
Yeah. So you had to put on some kind of a facade so that you could be confident in what you were doing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That was a big driver for me in my burnout. And I would say the two other big hallmark symptoms of burnout, are exhaustion.
Hmm.
So it's not just physical exhaustion, though that's definitely one of them. It's mental and emotional exhaustion. This might be, like you get a text from a friend or a family member and you just like cannot bear to respond to it at the
Okay.
end of the day. And not,
I think we've all been there. I mean, come on. Can't respond to every text.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. I would say like, you know, this tends to be more of like a persistent block where you
Yeah.
just don't have the mental energy to deal with the thing or even just hang out with someone, where someone's asking you to spend time with them and you don't you just don't even have the energy to make the plan. Another way that shows up a lot with my clients, and this may sound silly, but like so exhausted, you don't want to go get your Amazon boxes at the end of the driveway
Oh,
or
wow.
out.
Yeah. So almost
Yeah.
debilitating exhaustion.
Yes, debilitating exhaustion. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's also with the exhaustion comes brain fog,
Yeah.
um, analysis paralysis, like an inability to make decisions because you just there's just too much you're processing.
You're feeling overwhelmed.
You're just completely
Yeah.
overwhelmed and cannot process. And so even small decisions like where to go eat feels like a big decision,
Hmm.
or you just can't think of it. So they're very physical, physical signs as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
can, I can see
Um,
that.
yeah, for sure. And then that leads to the third, actually, which is the low productivity and low engagement. And what I want to say about all this is while it's maybe easiest recognized at work in the work setting, and by definition, we say that, burnout is a work related issue. It's really not. There's so many causes of burnout, and you're going to see reduced productivity, low engagement, exhaustion, all these things I'm talking about. You're going to see them manifest in all facets of your life. And there's just so many factors that lead you to burnout. We can't really say it's just workplace related. It's just that we spend the most amount of time at work.
Yeah. I think that's an important point, though. It's everything that's happening in your life that could start to feel overwhelming and start to manifest physically. And I would imagine that these types of symptoms are ones that grow upon each other. So
Yes.
if you're not dealing with it, if you're not facing it, if you're not putting some sort of a strategy to heal it, then it's just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, what I have found personally is that if we already are under, stressful circumstances, we already have we're low resourced. Our resources can't meet our demands. something happens like a major life event, the birth of a child, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job. Burnout often kicks in, especially when there's a major life event that layers on top of what's already stressful. So I find that a lot. I actually, right before I talked to you, I just spoke with a client of mine. She she's doing wonderfully right now, but her burnout got so bad she actually had to take a year off. She had to take she took medical leave, and then she actually ended up leaving her role, and has taken a year to recover from burnout. But what pushed her was she was already working really intensely. She had more demands than resources. And then there were a number of things that happened in her life, like the death of her brother and some other things that just layered right on top. And so that is why she found herself in burnout. So there's so many factors, but it's certainly not just your work.
Yeah, not just work life that's contributing to it.
Oh,
And when you
yeah.
talk about resources, can you define that for me?
Yeah. So resources can be one sort of how we care for ourselves, right? So sort of like our self-care toolkit, for lack of a better word, our bare essentials. So those would be things like eat, eating, like the bare essentials, nutrition, sleep, hydration. When those things are not in order, we are extremely susceptible to burnout. That is the that is sounds so obvious when I say it out loud,
Yeah.
but it's actually always the thing we focus on first in burnout prevention and recovery, because it's just when you're busy and you're a parent and you're working and you have a lot of, demands, just life is lifing you, right? It's so
Yeah.
easy.
Life is
It's so
lifing you.
easy.
Yeah.
Life is
I like
lifing you.
that.
So easy to forget. And so, resources are like the bare essentials, like those, movement,
Yeah.
um, socializing, eating, drinking, all those things, taking breaks.
Yeah, it's
Resource,
interesting to think of them as resources, right? I mean, it's like we're all told, if you want to be healthy, you need to move, you need to eat
yeah,
nutritiously, right? These are the kind of the basics, but to think of us doing those things as building up resources to handle the stresses and challenges that we come across. I like that idea. I like that you're building up that healthy bank so that
yeah,
you can weather whatever's coming your way.
yeah, that's exactly right. It's your bank, it's your tool belt, it's your foundation, It took me a really, really long time to like fully understand that your well-being is central to anything else you want to do. You want to be the best parent you can, best grandparent you can, the best, most successful person in your role. Everything really boils down to your bank, right? Like what is
Yeah.
in that well-being bank. And so we always have to be paying attention to it. And I took it for granted a lot, in my 20s, certainly in my 30s. It really wasn't until my late 30s, early 40s that I started paying, very close attention to it. But it's made a huge impact on my life. So that's one big resource category. Another resource category is support. And so there's all different types of support, for all different, you know, um, all different types of people, and, what financial resources are available to them. And so there's therapy. There are support groups. You can find yourself in community, whether it's church or, sports or some sort of social group. It is really, really important to have external support, more so than just your partner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and so I would say community, that kind of support is a big part of it. Um, certainly like, paying for support like therapy is great. And even if you can't afford therapy, there are free and like, low cost options that do exist if you do research them. But I'm always, a proponent of that. Um, Other resources are, I call it just like education, educating yourself on how to improve your well-being. I think people don't know where to start.
I agree.
They don't know where to start. There's a lot of out there. There's a lot of information out there. But I would say that, there are some podcasts. There are some really great people that have really practical ways of applying these types of concepts. One I really like a lot is I like the Huberman Lab podcast. Andy Huberman, he's a
Yeah.
neuroscientist, and while he's a scientist and his podcast can be pretty dense, what I love about his podcast is that he takes a mostly well-being concept, explains the science, the most up-to-date research, and gives a really, really sort of basic protocol on how to try this thing. And it's free and it's accessible to everyone.
That's
And not
awesome.
only not only does he talk about it, he has it on his website as well. So, he will show you the protocols there to try. So I think educating yourself is a big part of it. I think a lot of us just frankly don't even know what's happening as it's
Right.
happening. And
Yeah.
so let me just plug my computer in before it dies on us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We wouldn't want that.
But part of it is is just
Sarah's computer's burning out right now.
God. Oh, we saved it. We're fine. Part of it is just the awareness, I think. Resources is just staying aware of what some common practices are and what is out there for you. Are there any other resources? And we touched a little bit on the support, but I would expand on that to say community and not isolating yourself could not be more important,
Yeah.
really,
Right.
in all of this. Staying connected to others is a really, really big part of avoiding and recovering from burnout. And it feels like the last thing you want to do when you're stressed out and exhausted.
Definitely. Yeah. You just want to crawl in bed and stay home.
You just want to crawl in bed and stay home. But I will tell you from personal experience and, from my clients, it's like when you don't want to do it is usually the time you need to do it.
Yeah. That's great advice. That's so true.
It's so true. And it's very similar with going to the gym when it's a new habit, which is you dread going. And that's really the hardest part, is getting there and getting out the door. And once you're there, things feel quite different.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I just recently started going back to the gym this year, and it's hard to get started. The first couple times I didn't want to be there, and then you just kind of turn your brain off, make sure that you're doing it, just show up, just get started. And it's been great. Like I'm feeling great, and it definitely has an effect on everything that I'm doing.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, it has an effect on everything. And, starting small is really important,
It is, yeah.
I think that's a hard thing that's a very hard thing, I think, for us to do as humans and well, at least Americans. We want to go big, we want to go hard, we want to go kind of guns blazing into something,
Yeah.
right?
We want immediate results.
We want immediate results. Yeah, we want immediate results. And I I think to myself, like, oh, I wish I had all these tools and I had all these practices, like, oh, in my 20s and 30s. But the reality is that little things really just little habits compounded over time. And so, like, even the gym example that you mentioned, I think I went to the gym for the first time when I was 25, actually, and I did not want to go, and I started going for aesthetic reasons, vanity. It's vanity. I was living in New York, and
Yeah.
I have to look perfect. And then eventually it changed change really dramatically to how I felt, how it made me feel. And, years later, I mean, I love going to the gym, and it doesn't have to be a love for you, but the point is eventually these habits add up and compound and feel easy and make trying new things much easier as
Yeah,
well.
it is so true. I mean, starting small, just even if it is just listening to a podcast like Sounds of Health, for instance,
That's like
just,
sounds of
it's going to expose you to things that are out there that are going
Shameless
to help you.
self-promotion.
I know. I have to get a few in there every now and then. Yeah, but it really is just getting started, starting small. I think the community aspect, getting involved with other people is really important, and even in service to other people. I think that's something that we don't talk enough about when it comes to mental health. Is if you can get out of your own head and do something for another person, it just pays dividends. It really helps your own mindset and your framework and everything that you're doing.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the things that actually got me through one of the things that helped me get through my burnout and my divorce process was actually being in service to others. And during that time, I did a lot of mental health coaching. So these were individuals that, and I'm not a clinical therapist, right? So I wasn't treating people with clinical anxiety and depression and other clinical mental health challenges, but I was coaching people who were kind of in that space right before where they were
Yeah,
dealing
that's interesting.
and stress, burnout, anxiety, situational depression, but weren't seeking a diagnosis nor needed clinical treatment. And so, I mean, really doing that work was extremely, extremely helpful because I was able to not focus on myself and have more perspective. The helping of others is a huge piece of it for sure. And not being in our own heads, like you said.
Yeah, yeah, it does help a lot to just, it broadens your world, first of all.
For sure. Yeah, the perspective is everything.
So tell me more about what it is that you offer in what you do. When do people come to you? How do they find you? What are the things that you help people with?
Yeah. So I would say there are kind of two main tracks. So track one are people who come to me that are either on the verge of burnout or are in active burnout. And so, while they are leaders or, like high achieving professionals in some of those companies I mentioned, primarily what we're focused on is their well-being and getting them to a healthy state. Often people that come to me in active burnout or on the verge are also ready to leave their careers entirely, leave their jobs. I know this personally. I went through it, and almost everyone I coach goes through it. And sometimes it's the right decision to leave. And oftentimes it's actually not, but our burnout is convincing us that if we just go somewhere else or if we just quit our careers entirely, all this will go away. So primarily we focus on their well-being and getting them to a place where it's at a healthier baseline. And that's through a number of different ways. It's one-on-one coaching. And so it's extremely custom to the individual. While there's a number of evidence-based practices I use and somewhat of a framework, it's really all about the individual, where they're at and who they are. So it's very, very custom one-on-one coaching in that sense.
That's great.
And then eventually we get to a place where they can evaluate, should I leave? Should I go? And if I do, what does that look like? And so there is some work with them on that front as well. And then the other track, that is actually what I would describe as career, like executive and leadership coaching with an anti-burnout, well-being centered approach, right? So it's, how do we tackle these extremely difficult leadership challenges? How do I approach this career pivot? without all the overwhelm, anxiety, and losing myself in the process. So that's also one-on-one coaching. And so in that track, I would just say it's a little bit of a flip where it's more so focus on what they want to accomplish as a leader and in their career, and then just making sure that they are maintaining their well-being and focusing on their well-being and not losing it in that process, which is very easy to do.
Yes, definitely.
When you are, like I said, driven and also maybe a parent and, just life is happening.
Of course.
And especially, I work with a lot of people in like fast growing companies, really intense environments where it's kind of systemic, to get burned out just because of the nature of the speed and what you're working on. And also a lot of their missions, they're extremely passionate about. And so it's easy to get lost in that. But so primarily it's one-on-one coaching for both of those tracks. And occasionally it's speaking and occasionally it's like group workshops and things like that. But primarily the work is one-on-one coaching.
And is it via Zoom, in person, mix of both?
It's Zoom, actually.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, there was a mixture. And occasionally I do see my clients in person when they're traveling here or I'm traveling to New York City. I would say most of my clients are in just major metropolitan areas, but it's all Zoom.
That's great.
It's all Zoom.
Yeah, so you can help people all over the world, really.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And it's so interesting because you can learn someone and find a good connection with someone and make progress over Zoom. And I actually even had that with my own therapist, and it was surprising to me how it was still able to happen, not seeing them in person.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I know some of us are kind of burnt out with virtual meetings, and Zoom, but it is, such a amazing tool. I mean, it's so great that we have the ability to do that. Because it is a connection, it's a connection we didn't used to be able to have.
It is a connection. And, sometimes I'll do phone only, and it's actually really, really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I have to say, like, the connection is better than nothing. For most of the people that I work with, even just taking the hour for our coaching session is a lot of the work in of itself, because they really don't have the space, the safe space, the time just for themselves. And so even just making that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Setting it on your calendar and sticking to it. I think that's a lot of business owners. That's what we do, right? Like, we program that calendar. If it says take a rest or take a break, you do it.
You gotta do it.
Gotta do it. What does the calendar say?
Yeah. And, so I have a bunch of coaching clients that are kind of both of those categories. And I'm actually kind of going through my own career pivot change a little bit myself. I wouldn't say it's burnout, although there have been some. Now that I know the signs, I'm aware of what to do about it, and I can catch it before it, takes its toll. But while I'm going to continue to coach, I'm getting ready to think about going back in-house somewhere in another tech company.
Oh, wow.
So
That's amazing.
See how that goes. Yeah. And hopefully just bringing my newfound toolkit and a lot of the things that I've, honed over the last several years where I go.
Yeah. That's awesome, Sarah. I think it's amazing, just your entire journey and path. And it's been so nice to witness kind of what you've been through. I mean, you and I were close friends during a time in our lives when we went through a lot. I mean, like you said in the beginning, those were formative years, and we had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of success. And I remember when, we both moved to New York, and, you went out of the acting arena and into that other career. And it didn't surprise me at all, because I always thought you were a person that could take on the world and that could be hugely successful. I've said this before. I've said it to Jason. It's funny how theater people, like I really believe that theater people are those types that can accomplish a lot. You know, I think back of all the people that we worked with and knew, and I can only imagine the success that they could have just based on how hard they worked, you know.
Yes.
During those years, you know, like I always had 3 or 4 jobs, you know, whether it was being in a show, having a day job, working on writing and performing. You know, we were always doing so much. So it makes sense that you can have that and then take it into another arena. I didn't know I had other skills until I kind of started working for the Fox Foundation in New York, you know, and just set me off on another path. But
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how people in the arts can find other things as well.
Yeah, I find people in the arts to be extremely, like you said, I mean, they're hard workers, but they're for sure extremely agile,
Yeah.
extremely adaptable, and extremely resilient people. Extremely resilient.
Right.
And in fact, I think a lot about how my acting training, my singing, all of that was a set of tools actually for my own my own coping tools at the time. And now there's so much science and research behind it, you know, around like even just like breathing, you know, and how like certain vocal exercises or, you know, scales I would be singing is stimulating the, you know, the vagal nerve, right?
Yeah, right.
All these sorts of things we didn't really know about.
Yeah.
But for sure, all the individuals like that we went to school with and people in the creative space, I mean, the creativity in of itself is fundamental for mental health and physical health. But it makes you extremely resilient in the rest of the world and able to do very many things.
I'm going to chime in a little bit behind the scenes here. You can't see me off camera, but yeah, I looking back at our time in performance, and because I was performing as well in New York later on, it's more in terms of productivity with me and goal orientation. So as theater folk, we always have a goal to put on a show. You know, the show must go on and making it work, and it gets stressful. It does.
Oh yeah.
You know, the theater, you have that week before a show goes up. It's called Hell Week for a reason. And burnout is something that happens, particularly with a lot of people in the entertainment industry. You know, I was feeling it when I was, you know, traveling back and forth to New York for being on set for films and television that I was doing. You know, but you learn physically, as you were pointing out, how to handle that and how to deal with it, which is something that other, you know, occupations don't have. There's also that mentality that, well, I can't do that. It's a young man's game, you know, being in certain industry, certain profession.
Sure. Yeah.
And I felt that way when I was performing, when I was acting, you know, like looking at all the people that were younger than me coming up, you know, doing a whole lot more, you know, physically because they're younger. But then I look at the people who are older than me, who are doing the same exact thing. They're traveling, they're performing, they're acting at a higher level than I could ever imagine.
Right.
And it's all a matter of preparation and productivity and wellness and in the full package of being an artist. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. What you said there about, it's so fascinating to me because I'm in way better shape mentally and physically than I was, I mean, by far in my 20s and 30s,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Absolutely.
So it's really never too late. It truly is never too late to start. And now I'm just like so grateful that, you know, I spent the time and suffered as I did and learned the things that I did, because it's like now I feel so much more youthful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I use so much of what I learned during those years in my business and in raising my children.
Yeah.
There's so much of it that I adapt to it, and the stories that I tell my kids and the experiences that I share to help them to maybe learn something, or, and they don't really listen to me anymore. They're teenagers, but, I keep trying. But yeah, it is amazing. And I think you're right. It's never too late. That's been a theme of this podcast for us, is getting people to understand that it's never too late to get started. If you're here and you've got breath in your lungs, you can still make a change in a positive way and do something that, meet a goal that you set for yourself.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, and I just want to double down on the creativity part, I guess, and how creativity is actually something we focus on in burnout recovery, doing I mean, most of my clients actually were creatives or are creatives in some way, and it's a part of themselves that they've abandoned, right? And
Yeah.
so, coming back to creative outlets is so important in maintaining well-being, whatever it is for you. And even if you're not good at it, I want to say also, it can be quite freeing to do something with that like beginner's mindset, child's approach
Yes,
again.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, any sort of idea that like you need to master it or be good at it, but just to have the experience of fun and creating something.
Yeah, that's something I really connect with, is that idea of a beginner's mindset and approaching everything in a playful way, in a childlike way,
Yep.
always wanting to learn and grow.
Yep.
And when we talk about creativity, I think it's important for people to understand it doesn't necessarily mean you're an artist. That you don't have to be an actor or a painter to
Yes.
be creative. There are people that are creative in lots of ways. I see it in athletes. The way that athletes can adapt and respond to something. It's using creativity in a way
Yes.
that's physical, and it's really incredible to watch. So there's whatever you're doing in your life, there's ways to have that creativity.
Yeah.
Inside it, like to use it.
100%. Yeah. You just make your definition of creativity way less rigid.
Yeah, right.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, this has been such a great conversation, and I'm so happy that you're doing so well and you're helping so many other people. It's just so great. I was so happy to reconnect with you. I mean, it's been at least 25 years, I think, since we were on stage together, and working together, and
Oh.
me directing you and Jason in my show that I had written. So thinking back to those times, all I have are amazing memories, and I love what you're doing today. I'm glad that we reconnected and we can stay in touch and hopefully help each other moving forward as well.
Same. This has been so fun. I could talk for hours about this stuff
I
with you guys.
know, me too. Well, we will probably have you back, because I do feel like there's so many things we touched on that can be an
Yeah.
episode in and of itself. But the way that we wrap up each episode is by asking our guests to share one tip from their life, like something that you do in your life that helps you to be healthier, either physically, emotionally, or mentally, that would help our audience.
Yeah. Gosh, this is so hard to choose just one,
Yeah, I
right?
bet.
So hard. I would say, just because this seems to be a really big theme right now, and I've been thinking a lot about social media, the age of social media, and lack of connectedness, and isolation a lot,
Yeah.
and how that impacts our mental health and contributes to burnout. And so, what I would say is socialize, and you can do it even in small ways. If you don't want to go out and go out to dinner or reconnect with old friends, you could do something even smaller. I think of the examples and sort of experiments I'd run with people during COVID, which was connect with a stranger. It doesn't, and this and research echoes this, right? Connectedness doesn't have to be having an in-depth, deep conversation with an old friend or spending a weekend with someone. It can be making eye contact with someone, a stranger, smiling, saying hello, just connecting in your humanity with one another, just having a brief exchange is a really small way to start. So I would say the socialize is the single most important thing, I would say.
That's
to focus
great.
on.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's something you're focused on in your life as well.
Yeah, I've part of the reason why I'm actually going back to work somewhere is because I'm feeling it's extremely isolating as a coach. I talk to tons of people on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I'm a huge extrovert, and also it's not the same when it's one person on a on a video call. And so I've been really focused on how can I, work with a team again? How can I be in person again? And so work is an avenue to that. And another avenue is I'm just trying to make more adult friends.
That's great. Yeah.
I live in San Jose, and San Jose is a huge city, but it feels like just a big suburban sprawl, and everyone here works in tech. And so it's extremely hard to make friends. And, of course, people are parents and have lives
Of
and are
course.
traveling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, a big focus for me has been making more adult frenzies in the area.
Well, I think that's a great tip for people, and to just be out there and connect with others.
Yeah, for sure. Even on the hard days, just, being kind to someone in person and saying hello.
Yeah.
It actually makes a pretty big difference.
You know what? I was just thinking, Sarah, you are our 60th guest
Really?
on Sounds of Health.
Wow.
Oh, really?
We've had
I didn't know.
groups on Sounds of Health and a few events that we did. Sarah, you're our 60th guest. We should do a massive Zoom session of all 60 guests.
Oh my God.
And then just have everyone meet each other.
A drop-in. I like
Yeah,
that.
maybe we should do that. We did try to have an end of season party last year. We had a small turnout for it, but it was nice to get people that had been on the podcast in the same room. So yeah, we're thinking about ways that we can grow this community and create more connections. That's kind of the idea behind it, is we wanted to share what all of these people are doing and to connect with people. So
I did I was looking at a bunch of your podcasts, and I was looking at a bunch of the guests, and there were already a bunch that I was like, oh, I want to talk to that person.
Yeah.
That's a great episode. I'll be in town actually in July for like a month.
Oh, awesome. Well, we definitely have to connect when you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can get a few people out. You can meet some new people.
Socialize.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, this has been so much fun, and definitely keep in touch and let us know where your journey's taking you next. I definitely want to hear where you end up. I know wherever you go, it's going to be hugely successful.
Oh, thank you, Dave. And thanks, Jason. This was great. Time just flew.
Our pleasure.
It definitely did fly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Sounds of Health. Thank you all out there for listening. Sounds of Health is brought to you by Nutmeg Insurance Advisors and recorded at the offices of Nutmeg Advisory Group. We are in the midst of upgrading our location. So over this season, you're going to start to see a little new things coming as we help to connect you to those resources out there to help you to upgrade your health and your life. So I just want to say thank you to our producer, Jason Carubia, and to Rob Hames for the incredible music. As always, I'm your host, Dave MacNiven. And every week, we bring you stories that inspire, empower, and help you to upgrade your health. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and leave us a review. We love hearing from you, and we hope that you continue as an important part of our wellness community. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.